It's acres and move makers. It's
Acres and move makers.
I deal with land flippers, acres and move makers, room shakers, big boys with huge paper, the newspapers. You can run but can't escape us. We winning with these flash green when they act racist. Success is so contagious. Let's go.
It's acres and move makers.
Welcome to Acres and Move Makers. My name is Ray.
My name is Jay,
And we are.
the Acre Boys.
Today we want to talk to you guys about the top 6 mistakes that new land investors make.
So let's go ahead and jump right into it, right? The first mistake that I see newer land investors make is they never check the actual flood zone to the property, right? And I'm gonna add a caveat to that, right? Because when you're looking at actual flood zone, there's maps that we use to identify to make sure that property is not in a flood zone. And just to go a little bit deeper in detail with that, right? Usually, if we're investing in an urban community or whatever the case may be, and I see that the properties in that area are in a flood zone, the first thing I'm going to do is check to see if there are other structures built around it, because that's going to be an indication that I can build a structure and a flood zone is normal in that particular area. But if I'm doing with rural vacant land, that might be a little bit different, because inside of those places where they may actually have flood zone, that might be ideal for hunting property. So definitely something you got to keep in mind. The next thing most land investors make a mistake about is access, right? Now, when we're talking about access to the property, right, which is the equivalent to a property being landlocked and a property having access, right? Now, there's 2 different accesses you can have. You can have physical access and legal access. The difference in between the two is when you have physical access, yeah, you can go ahead and cross through somebody else's property and get to that property. But in order to make it legal, you have to have an actual easement on deed, which gives you permission to actually go past someone else's property and get to your property in the back. That's why when we're investing, very, very important for you to remember, when we're investing, we want to make sure that the property has access directly from the road. So if you're coming up a street on any residential block that you know, you're driving up that street and you're pulling right into the property. Very, very important when it comes to actually doing that. And the next one is what is adjacent to the property that you're investing in, right? Because that's going to be a telltale sign of what you can actually do with yours. Like I said, it's 2 different things. There's inside of the city limits and outside of the city limits. If you're inside the city limits, you're going to have to abide by those rules, those regulations. That those properties particularly have planning and zoning that you can go ahead and check to make sure what that area is actually designated for. But if you're dealing with outside the city limits, which has no zoning, that means that you can pretty much free for all and you can do whatever you want as far as that property is concerned.
Yeah, I want to dive in and just talk about the comparables. You want to make sure you go out and find some comparables to make sure what you're paying for that property is going for what the going rate is, right? You want to check the market. You want to see if you're getting a good price, and that's what those comparables will do. It'll give you an overview of the area that you're playing in, and it'll let you know what other things are selling for and what has sold over the past year, year and a half. You know, land doesn't fluctuate so much. So if you can get some comparables, at least from the last year or the last 2 years, you should be good. And that'll give you a good idea about the price that you're paying for it.
For sure. And very important about that comparable thing is when you're doing land investing, like Ray said, that is the only way that you're going to ensure that you're buying a property for the right price, that you can actually make a profit. If you're not checking the comparables, you're never going to know if you're getting a right property or if you're getting it all by the right price, because you have to know what it's worth as opposed to what you're actually getting it for. So very key with that comparable, for sure.
And, you know, to dive in deeper with the comparables, it depends on what type of investing that you're doing. Like if you're buying from an auction, whether that's an online auction or an in-person auction, you're going to go out and do your own homework and you're going to get your own comparables. So you need to know how to look at comparables. So even if you're buying direct from an owner and you have a realtor that's giving you some comps in the area, double check your realtor. Find your own comps. We've seen in our past that one traditional realtor that we got, good friend. She's a good friend of ours as well. We've done about between 5 and 10 deals with her, but she's very modest in her numbers. So we noticed in our first 2 or 3 deals that we done with her, we were seeing numbers that we thought was higher. And she kept giving us one deal. We could have lost about 30,000,
30,000,
about 30,000 on a deal because she's a very modest person. It's not nothing that she's doing on purpose. She doesn't want to give numbers there, and that you may not can hit. But you know, we like to push and see what we can get. The reason why, and we're not going to go off topic, but the reason why is because you can always start high and come down.
Mm-hmm.
You can't start low and go up. That's a little harder to do.
Challenge for sure.
You understand 100%. What I'm saying? But you need to know how to check your own comps regardless of what you're buying or who's getting them to you. You need to know how to check comps.
For sure.
The next one is topography. And you want to know how to look at topography because you need to know what's on the land, whether that's timber. When it comes to timber, you need to know what kind of timber. Do you have marketable timber? Is it pine trees on the land? Is it oak trees? Is it underbrush? Is it overcut? All of these things are going to be very important because that's going to let you know how much your land is worth. Clearly, if you have a 10 acre that's covered in pine and oak trees, it's going to be probably go for more than a 10 acre that was just overcut or underbrush. Not probably, it will go for more. Actual fact. So you need to know how to look at topography. Is it anything? Is it an old mobile home on it, right? Is that valuable, right? It all depends on the bones of the mobile home. One thing I'll shed light on that, if the mobile home is there, it lets you know either one or two things. That electricity is or at one time ran to that mobile home and septic was figured out at one point or another. And if it's still there, that's going to make that land a lot more valuable than if it was not there. The next one is slope. And when it comes to slope, we only really deal with slope when we're dealing with larger tracts. If you were dealing with an infill lot, you wouldn't really be concerned with slope unless you had a big hole in your land, and that'll be the obvious, right? You can see that in an infill lot or a residential lot. You'll see that it had a hole in it. But when you're dealing with slope on a larger tract, you just don't want it to have too much slope in a short range, right? Mm-hmm. If it's some slope and it's over 200, 300, 400 feet, then that should be okay to buy. And you need to know, very key, you need to know what the area is doing. Like, for example, there's certain parts of North Carolina that is very mountainous. So everything is on the slope and everything is on the hill in certain parts. So you need to know wherever you're playing at, whatever area you're playing at, what happens in these areas. Pennsylvania, the same thing. A lot of places are on hills and it's just slopey in certain areas. So if your area is a place that's known for slopes, then you probably can get away with a little more things than an area that's not known for slope, if that makes sense.
Right. So those are the 6 mistakes that we see new land investors make.
So, like, follow, subscribe.
All that.
If you thought the content was helpful, we're trying to help a handful of people come into our community and be a part of a family, right? That's what we're breeding over here. We're breeding a family of land investors. If that might be you, simply drop it in the comments. Let us know your thoughts of joining us in our land endeavors. We'll love to have you, the right person. We're not looking just for anyone. We'll love to have the right person. So to the next time, y'all know the motto, invest in dirt.
It's the cleanest way to make money.